Welcome to the Boschcast with James Boschman and Denise Young, where we talk about Manitoba real estate and everything else that's on our minds. Hey, what's going on, everyone? What's going on, Denise?
Hi.
I got a joke for you.
Okay.
Where do rainbows go when they're bad?
When they're bad? Oh, no, I don't know.
Prism.
Oh, geez.
But it's just a light sentence.
Oh, geez.
Oh, man. I tried to find like good, clean dad jokes. There's a lot of real risky ones out there, but I'm trying to keep this like at least PG-13.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in to episode 6 of the Boschcast. I'm James Boschman, co-host Denise, and I was off last week, but you did a great job with Sue there. I thought that was awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, she did great.
Yeah, she did phenomenal and like super knowledgeable, and you guys had just really great conversation about everything mortgage related. So I actually learned quite a bit from that. And it kind of got me excited because I do have some ideas of some guests that I think would be really great to bring on and have like a good 3-way convo. And so I'm looking forward to lining some of those people up soon in the near future anyways. But yeah, as always, if people listening or watching, if you guys have any real estate related questions or otherwise market related questions, please don't hesitate to let us know, and we'll try to talk about them or answer them on the podcast. And please like, share, and subscribe this because it helps with YouTube's algorithm and gets the good word out there. So we love talking about real estate and helping people. Doesn't matter what the price point is, doesn't matter where they're looking to buy or sell. Like, we're kind of like find a need, fill a need realtors. So if you have a need, then we'll try to fill the need. So
how was Clear Lake?
It was good. Yeah. So I was gone basically like Thursday to Monday night, Tuesday. And we went just on like a getaway because we were supposed to go on a hot vacation in January, but the flights got all screwed up, which is kind of like par for the course with a lot of people. They kept just getting pushed back and resulted in delays in our trip and losing time out of our trip and all that kind of stuff. And we kind of figured, you know what, like we got some renos that we want to do to our house this year, and we want to build a deck. So we're kind of like, you know what, let's just do a little getaway and then like a local winter thing, maybe do a couple more sporadically throughout the year, and then, focus on that. We can always do a hot vacation next winter. So hopefully everything kind of simmers down with the flights and, all the craziness with losing luggage and stuff like that. So definitely lots of horror stories out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so when we went out there, we realized that it was actually a winter activity weekend in Clear Lake. So I guess like in the park, like in Wasagaming, in the town, there's a lot of stuff to do in the summertime. And there's the lake house, hotel and restaurant, which is super phenomenal. Like it's really beautiful, and they always have stuff going on. But they were still open. Arrowhead Hotel was open, and the Friends of Riding Mountain National Park, which is like the welcome center in Wasagaming, they were open. And I guess in an attempt to bring out a lot of people for winter activity stuff and just get people out there, they hosted this big weekend party basically. And out of those 3 places, they were all doing something a little different. So the lake house had a pop-up it was a giant igloo building that they built, like a big igloo tent, and you walk in and they had a pizza oven in there, like an uni oven, and they were
Oh,
doing like hand pulled wood fire pizzas. And then they had like specialty drinks, like wintry drinks and stuff like that. It was super fun.
that
And
sounds
then
fun.
they had like a private dinner thing in like a cedar hut. It was really cool. We didn't do that because we didn't know about it far enough in advance to book it, but
Oh, okay.
we ended up going for dinner. And then Arrowhead Motel, they were giving out free skate rentals pretty much like
Oh,
all day, all weekend.
yeah.
And then by the where the beach is in Wasagaming, they made all these really beautiful skating paths. And then there are these big spruce trees and they had them all lit up with string lights.
Oh,
And
nice.
they had a awesome like big skating rink with like a warming hut. So you put your skates on, you rip around on the rink and then go down the skating path. And they had like these, it was really like Instagram kind of like friendly. Like they
Right.
had arches and lights and everything.
Yeah. I think I saw some on Tara's Instagram.
Yeah. But I hadn't skated for years.
Oh, yeah.
And there's this thing, I guess, I didn't realize it because I'm getting old, but like when you haven't skated in a while and you put on, especially like these skates were brand new skates too. They weren't
Oh,
broken in. So getting that like arch
yeah.
pain, that's a real thing. And I was like excruciating pain
Yeah.
just standing on the skates.
Oh, wow.
And I was frustrated because I used to be a really like great skater when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I was just mad because I couldn't give her that hard. But I would like skate a little bit and then I would sit down, take a break, let these puppies breathe a little bit,
Yeah.
and then get back up and I would start skating a little bit more. And after every time I would do that, I kind of broke them in a little bit more. And then
Oh, that's good.
my feet got a little better. And by the end of it, I was going pretty hard. So Tara and I are actually, we don't have skates. And
Yeah.
so we're going out this weekend to buy some. And then we're going to go do the river trail at the Forks. So
Oh, nice.
I'm
You
going
know
to,
where we were the other night? That's really beautiful for skating is St. Mattel Park.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, right on the duck pond.
Oh,
Oh, sorry, I
go
forgot
check that
to
out.
silence my phone today.
Oh, no worries. And yeah, and then we ended up going, we had some friends that came out, Beth and Kyle, and they stayed with us for a couple nights, and we ended up going snowshoeing. There was like a free snowshoeing adventure. Everybody kind of convoyed in one area and then went to this really beautiful trail. And it wasn't a hard trail or anything, but it was kind of like a nature hike. So the guides taught us about the nature in the area, and
Oh,
it was kind of
cool.
like a safety thing too. Like if you went on a hike, by yourself and you were stuck in a snowstorm, or if you tripped and broke your ankle, like they taught you what to do to survive in the bush.
Oh, okay.
And it was really fun. And then on the last day, Tara and I did a pretty nice hike, and man, the weather was just phenomenal. The crazy thing, we drove out on Thursday. We got out there. It was like, not even exaggerating, minus 44 with the wind chill.
Yeah, minus gazillion. Yeah.
And we were like, there's no way we're going to be able to do anything.
Yeah.
And I'm always like really rosy cheeks, but I'm even more so because I got windburn.
Right. Yeah.
And it's been like kind of painful, actually. It feels like a sunburn.
Right.
But the next morning, like literally overnight, the temperature climbed over 40 degrees.
Wow.
It went from minus 44 with the wind chill to like +2, which is insane. And it was so foggy because of the weather change, but
Yeah.
oh man, it was so beautiful. And like, it's such a beautiful place. Like Riding Mountain National Park is just gorgeous. So
Awesome.
definitely didn't want to come home, but yeah, we'll go back for sure. But yeah, and then while it was gone, obviously you were taking care of everything for me business wise, and like things are just going nuts here.
Things picked up. Yep.
Things picked up. There's like a big a big market flurry going on, it's like a
That's the kind of flurries we like.
that's kind of flurries we like. Yeah, exactly. So like I don't know if it's the milder temperatures because we had a pretty mild week.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like there's a lot of buyers coming out of hibernation now. Maybe it's because the days are longer, you
Maybe
know,
it's because of the pause.
maybe it's because of the pause. Yeah, we're pausing our rate hikes. That could be definitely it. But we've seen houses like go into multiple offers,
Yeah.
which is like, what? But houses going into multiple offers, houses selling really quickly that are, you know, good, solid bone houses. And I
Yeah.
think it's like, I think what it is, it's a lot of pent up demand. I think a lot of people out there, and I had said this on, I think, a previous podcast, but like, if we're going back into a normal market territory,
Right.
this is what happens in February. Like
Yeah.
buyers, they get their pre approvals, they're excited. And we
Yeah.
have this new wave of buyers that are just excited to jump into the market, and they
Exactly.
have no preconception of the last few years that we went through. They're just excited to be a homeowner, right? Like
Right.
whether it's like, getting out of mom and dad's basement or stop paying the rent. Because yeah, real estate prices are crazy, they're not crazy, but they're high.
Yeah.
But you're going to be paying a hell of a lot more in rent. you
Right.
know
Yeah.
rental rates are insane.
Whether you pay rent or a mortgage, you're paying a mortgage.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like you're just paying somebody else's mortgage when you're
Yeah.
renting something, right? And
Exactly.
I get it. Like if you're in a pinch or whatever, if you're having a hard time getting pre-approved, and everybody needs a place to live, but like
Yep.
there's like 0% vacancy, and I've been seeing stuff like advertised as rentals like 40 minutes outside of the city or an hour outside of the city, and they're getting snatched up like crazy, right? Because
Yeah.
it's like the pendulum that swings back and forth. And but there is it's kind of a cheesy saying, but the interest rate on renting is 100%.
Right.
So yeah, and but yeah, we're kind of feeling that. It kind of feels like that 2019 February pre-spring fizzle that's happening right now. Everybody's
Yeah.
getting gung-ho to get into the market and start buying, and the phones are definitely ringing now, which is good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a combo of people just excited to get into the market. I think it's could be that the fixed rates have come down a bit, because the fixed rates always follow what the Canada 5-year bond yield is doing, and it's definitely come down. And historically, we should be, high threes, low fours. And I mean, there are some brokers that I've been talking to that can get like 4.39 with the
Yeah.
very specific lender, like a Neo
Right.
Financial or something like that, or 4.59 on a 5-year fixed. It's not bad at all.
No.
But I've had other people like, well, why aren't the rates coming down lower?
Yeah.
Like if the bonds are taking a dive, then like if they're going down, shouldn't the rates be lower? And it's like, well, I think there's a lot more going on. Ultimately, banks can kind of dictate what they do with their own rates. I think that banks are probably having a bit of a liquidity problem, like a liquidity crunch right now. So they're like, let's just keep everything high. And that's why you see, like, I had a client yesterday who, went to get pre-approved. So they went to a big bank. Big bank is still over 5%. Like they still have a 5 in front of the fixed rate.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, that seems kind of high still. I'm like, yeah, go talk to a mortgage broker. Like they're going to get you something with a 4 in front of it, and you're going to be a lot happier.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, why is that happening? Like, why aren't the banks being more competitive? I said, well, there's probably something else going on there. But also, big banks are governed by the regulator, OSFI. And so some of them, they can negotiate their rates to a point. But a lot of these credit unions and B lenders and monoline lenders, they're not governed by the same rules, so they can drop their pants a lot quicker for you. And the benefit of going through a broker like somebody like Sue or Cam or one of these brokers is that these companies that they're with, they deal in volume.
Right.
So when they send your application to one of those lenders, they're like the Costco of mortgages, right?
Yeah, they're getting a bulk rate.
They're getting a bulk rate. So you're always going to get a better deal, you know? But yeah, the rates are coming down. I think a lot of people are excited by that, and they're kind of getting off the fence. And there's a bit of a, even though we talk about, how's it going to bidding wars and stuff like that, like it's still a balanced market. And, but I think that my prediction is that by, third quarter of this year, that's when they're going to start their rate, like decreasing the rates.
Right.
That's when you're going to see the Bank of Canada start, coming down again. And then we're going to be in a bit of a frenzy period again. Because people talk about pent up demand now.
Yeah.
Just wait until that happens.
Right.
There'll be a lot of pent up demand.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but yeah, so let's talk about, I forgot to put the ticker on here.
Oh,
but, market flurry. So, I've been kind of,
excuse me, sorry about that.
So we're talking about the weather, and I was watching some videos, like macroeconomic videos and podcasts and stuff like that, just really trying to learn more about what makes our like Canadian market tick. And I saw this comment that somebody posted under one of these videos, and it was a video they were talking about Bank of Canada and Tiff Macklem and stuff like that. And somebody had said, somebody please tell me the difference between Tiff Macklem, governor of Bank of Canada, and the weatherman, because there doesn't seem to be a difference, And, I watched Tiff Macklem, the Bank of Canada governor. He's the guy that comes out during these rate hike announcements and makes the announcement and tells the Canadian public, like, this is what we're doing on behalf of the government. He's the guy that came out, when things were ripping crazy, and saying that don't expect rates to go up until 2024. And, inflation's not a problem. It's transitory and all this kind of stuff. And I know I rip on him a lot, but it is kind of like the weatherman. And when he came out, the last was at January 25th, when he came out and they raised the rates again. And then he made that announcement that they're pausing.
Yeah.
He got a lot of backlash about that, just like I thought he would. And because it sends a signal to the market. And what happened after that day was the equities just went crazy. And it sent a signal to the entire market that, okay, inflation's peaked, it's rolled over, and now we're in deflationary territory now. Now things are going to come back down. And he had said, he is pretty dovish during that whole thing. And he was saying, like, this is all conditional upon us pausing, is conditional upon, energy and things that are unforeseen and all these underlying things like the war and stuff like that. He has to say that, like, it's very political. But I think the reality is that the guy is tired of getting slapped around by people, and I think he's tired of being mocked. And he came out, him and I can't remember who it was, if it was deputy finance minister or something, they came out and on the most exciting high octane, no holds barred news channel in Canadian history, CPAC.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen CPAC, but it's like a snooze fest. But
yeah,
basically came out a few days ago. I watched the whole the whole interview, and he was getting just ripped apart by journalists and reporters from the Globe and Mail and Reuters and
Yes.
CBC and like everybody. And they're like, aren't you concerned that your comments that you made are going to have a negative impact on inflation? And he didn't really know what to say. Like, he was pretty dodgy on the whole thing.
Right.
But he basically said that he's not that concerned right now because of global supply chain issues are seemingly coming back to normal. It's like, yeah, buddy, like, which data have you been looking at? Like, global supply chain issues have been coming back to normal now for like 6 months, and I think these guys are just so far out of touch with boots on the ground reality of what's happening. Like, there's too much bureaucratic stuff in government where the information has to pass through like a million different chains before it gets to the policymaker.
Right.
And then by the time they make a decision and change the policy, it's way too late. It's
way
like,
too late, yeah.
There's no forward guidance. There's no forward looking. It's just like fly by the seat of their
Very
pants.
reactionary.
Yeah, it's all reactionary.
Yeah.
And so he was saying that, basically he seemed like he was really fed up with all the questions. But the reality is this is really bad politically. So they're trying to spin the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I think that the pivot has started. And I know the Bank of Canada has another rate hike or rate announcement in March. That's another thing. This is the first time in history that the central banks pre-announce when they're going to be doing something with rates. Like, I don't think they normally do that. We don't hear about it, but I think my guess, and at this point, the market's guess, everybody's pretty much priced in that they're not going to hike again in March.
Yeah.
So, most of the reporters were kind of saying the same thing, and unless something chaotic happens, but they seem confident that these last 8 rate hikes are going to bring inflation down pretty quick. And, I guess we'll see what happens. They're trying to do it without breaking something, but I don't know if they will. But I think that, your last week's podcast with Susan, I think, she was saying, I think that she thinks that rates are going to stay relatively flat.
Yeah.
Where they are now, relatively the same for a while.
Yeah.
And I think that I think the same thing. I think all the markets have kind of priced it in too. I think that come Q3, they're probably going to start lowering the Bank of Canada rates. The overnight rates are probably going to start coming down. And so that's why I'm telling people, I can't really tell people what to do, but giving advice, and, a lot of mortgage brokers are kind of giving the same advice. It's like, you're thinking about buying now, don't lock in for a 5-year.
Right.
Like, do a 2 or 3 year, or do a variable, because variables are kind of risky, but like, at the end of the day, this is rolling over now and it's coming down. And I think it's going to happen a lot faster than what people think.
Exactly.
So, and then when that happens, the market's going to be ripping mad again. And then Tiff Macklem also, he was being questioned on immigration, and boy, they're sure downplaying that, like,
oh, really?
He's like, oh, there's some underlying demand in the market because of things like immigration. It's like, dude, the Liberals have almost 500,000 new PRs coming here this year, next year, and the year after that. It's like 1.5 million new immigrants here.
Yeah.
And where are they going to live? In my basement?
Right.
Like, these people are coming here with money. They're going to spend it. And, in my opinion, demand is demand. And they're trying to downplay the demand. It's like, just because they're immigrants, like, their money is just as green as everybody else's.
Right.
And we just don't have the inventory for it. So, you know, a lot of people, they're looking for the bottom of the market, like I talked about 2 weeks ago. Like, buyers are waiting for the sky to fall before they jump into the market. And I think it's come and gone already. I think like the last quarter of
Yeah.
2022 was the bottom of our
Right.
market here,
Yeah.
in terms of sales activity, in terms of prices, in terms of all that kind of stuff. And now the roller coaster is starting to go back up the hill, and
Exactly.
I think that's what's happening now.
Yeah.
So, but you know, all of this stuff, like, there's so much crap in the news too, like for the foreign buyer ban stuff, and you know, different provinces adding like cooling off periods to their residential real estate offers. Like BC has a cooling off period, which is redundant because you can just like completely cross it out. You don't even need to use it. You know,
Oh
you
wow.
can you don't have to
Yeah.
abide by it. You can waive it, you know. But
Don't
all
want
of
to
this
bother.
stuff, you know, even, you know, dare I say, the Real Estate Services Act, like all of these are things are, they're government smoke screens to show the public that they are trying to do something about housing. They're trying to, they're reaching their hands into the cookie jar and they're saying, we're going to try to make housing more affordable, and we're going to try to do this and try to do this. It's all political. It's all it is. And but behind the scenes, the money that's being spent to go into these things, like taxpayer dollars, is just insane. And it does nothing. Like, it has no impact. The
Yeah.
foreign buyer ban, it probably will have a little bit of an impact, but it's not going to have this huge, crazy impact that everybody's thinking it's going to have, you know. But you know, the government has to make themselves look like they're making a difference, right? And yeah. But anyways, I know I go on these political rants, but I've never been so politically infuriated and minded in my life until, you know, you have a small business that you're trying to run,
Right.
and your business happens to be real estate, you know, and helping people buy and sell and helping people navigate through the market. I
Yeah.
feel like it's more important than ever to try to get a handle on the macro stuff, you know, not just what, you know, that house sold for across the street or whatever. It's important to figure out what makes our market tick in the grand scheme, and how do, you know, even other central banks or countries, how do they impact our local market here? Because it paints the picture for what's to come, you know, and it helps to kind of advise people through this scary process of buying and selling. Because at the end of the day, like, it's a house that you're going to live in. Yes. And it's a roof over your head. It's a safe place to live and raise your kids, but it's also an investment. And for people who seem to think otherwise, like, it's, you know, it's at the end of the day, like, life happens, and the only way to get the equity out of your asset is to sell it.
Right.
So my job is, in our job, is to make sure that they know what they're getting into and kind of have a understanding of what's happening in the market. And,
Yeah.
you know, but yeah, that ends my rant. But I do have a story.
Do you?
Yeah. It's kind of a crazy story. It involves a slumlord.
Uh-huh.
And so, for people out there, if you don't know what a slumlord is, a slumlord is like a landlord who just doesn't care about anybody. All they care about is their the net income that they're making off of
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
whoever's living in the property. So basically, what happened was my first or second year in real estate, when you're like a young, wide-eyed realtor, you'll
Yeah.
think about anything, like you're like a bumblebee, like buzzing around, like trying to just help everybody. And actually had a mortgage broker. It was Cam Rukra. At the time, he worked for Scotiabank before he was an independent mortgage broker. And he called me, and he had this client who was out of town. He lived in BC. I can't remember exactly where, but he lived in BC. But the guy owned like 40 doors in Winnipeg.
Wow.
So he's a buy and hold investor, a residential real estate investor. And so Cam calls me up and he's like, "Hey, how would you like to work with this guy? He only buys stuff in the North End." And he's like, not like the cozy part of the North End.
Yeah.
Like not around McPhillips or anything. It's like, what's considered the red zone.
Yeah.
And he said he just looks for properties that cash flow. He doesn't care who's living in there, how many people are living in there. It's all about cash flow for him. And so he's like, he treats it like a business. I'm like, okay. So he said it's going to, if you're interested in working with him, it's going to involve showing a lot of these properties. I was like, okay, no problem. Like, I'm not scared to do that. So kind of took what I could get, and I decided to work with him. Now, because he lived in BC, obviously he wasn't here. So he had a property manager who wasn't any sort of like licensed property manager. Like he wasn't accredited in any way.
All right.
But he was an ex-Hells Angel.
Okay.
And pretty rough and tumbled guy, like a super big, jacked guy with tattoos, and kind of an older fella, but like
right.
Tell he lifted. And he would wear his HA patch everywhere he went. It was just like, okay. I think it was to intimidate and shake down tenants. But
right.
Basically, he called me and he said, "You're going to show this guy houses, and then he's going to report back to me what he thinks about the properties based on his experience and working with me on these other properties that we currently own.
Right.
And if he thinks they're good, then we'll get you to write the offer." So like, okay, sounds good. So I met this guy, probably met him, maybe showed him 10 houses. And out of the 10, they ended up buying 3.
Oh,
and and I would go out in different days, and it was like minus 40 outside. It was, January, February.
Yeah.
So there was 2 kind of experiences that I witnessed. The first one was they wanted to look at this side-by-side duplex on Arlington, right close to the bridge, kind of like Jarvis area, Duffer kind of area. And when I went to book the showing to show him this property, the listing agent, first of all, I noticed that, it was a certain listing agent. I won't say any names, but she was the queen of the North End at the time.
Okay.
Working with investors. And so booked the showing. It said vacant. It just said, links for the showing and go.
Right.
Okay, sure. So no 24-hour notice required, so I called the guy, said, "Meet me there tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. So I show up there, and then our buddy Tom Armstrong, who was also like the king of the North End. He was a realtor from our office at the time.
Yeah.
I don't think he's in real estate anymore, but he was like, he was the god of the North End. Like, he sold everything there. So I showed up.
Have him do story time one day.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure he's seen some crazy stuff out there.
Yeah.
So I showed up there meeting this guy, this property manager, and Tom's already there. And Tom's standing outside, and it's like January, February. So 9 a.m., it's still kind of like dark outside. So Tom's there by himself, and he's previewing the property for an out-of-town investor client. And he's there with a flashlight, like a real big, like, police flashlight. So he's outside and he's looking, and I show up there. I was like, "Tom, what are you doing here?" He's like, "Oh, I'm just previewing it. I'm like, okay, well, I guess we're gonna go in together. And he's like, do you hear that? And we could hear like music, boom, 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 like from the sidewalk. We were standing in front of the house. And we could see there was curtains closed, and it's a side-by-side duplex, so it's a 2-story.
Yeah.
And so the kitchens, the main floor is basically mirrored image of each other from each unit, and then there's second floor windows at the front, and then the doors to each unit are on the side of the building, side of each building, and then it's all fenced off in the front.
And both units are vacant.
Both units are supposed to be vacant. So we see like heads, like silhouettes of heads behind the curtains.
Uh-huh.
And I look at Tom and I was like, I thought this place is vacant. He's like, me too. So he's like, oh, this will be interesting. So we go, there's no cars outside or anything, but there was like you name it, diapers, beer bottles, everything was outside, like just strewn all over, like a big display. And Tom knocks on the door, and I was kind of scared, not gonna lie. He knocks on the door, and these guys come to the door, and there was like a legit party going on at 9 a.m. inside one of the units, and the music was blaring, and these guys come to the door and they're just hammered drunk, like falling outside basically. And Tom is like, well, we're just here to look at the property. We're both realtors, and we got a client here, and we're just doing our walkthrough. And the guy was like, oh, is this place for sale? And we're like, yeah, there's a sign outside. And he said, oh, wow. And he looks at, and there's probably like 10 or 15 people in that one unit. And he's like, we should buy it. And they all start laughing. And I was like, are you guys renting here? Like, are you guys tenants? And they're like, no. And they just look at each other. So they had broken in, and they were squatting and partying in there.
Oh my God.
And this is a brand, like they had just done, you could tell they'd just done a splash and dash renovation, like a little lipstick renovation to get it ready for showings and stuff like that. It had like the Costco laminate floors, and they painted the old cabinets, you know, the classic. Right. But they just destroyed this place. And it was like, holy man. And then it's an old house, okay, like early 1900s.
Yeah.
And the wall separating the two units was all plaster.
Oh, no.
And we start walking in there, and we're like, okay, don't mind us. We'll be quick. And they had punched a hole or kicked a hole through the joining wall. You could see all the plaster, and the lath was all pulled out like this.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, well, I guess we don't need the key for the door for the other unit. So we just squeeze in the little hole.
Oh my gosh.
And Tom is like, hello, hello. And he hears like this boom, 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 boom in the other unit. So we're like, holy crap, you know, somebody's in there. And it's like, of course somebody's in there. So then we go in, we go up the stairs, and it looked like, so we could hear this like moaning sound. It wasn't like,
oh no,
it wasn't like that kind of moaning, but it was a guy who had taken some kind of injectable drug.
Oh no.
And he had just done it, and he was passed out on a blow-up mattress. But the needle, I guess, poked a hole in the blow-up mattress, so it was deflating as he was on it, and it just like closed around him. And I was like, Tom, I've never been in a situation like this before. What do we do? And he's like, let's just phone the listing agent, you know? So we got on the phone with her, like, hey, it's James and Tom, and we're outside, had her on speakerphone.
Yeah.
And there is not only squatters, but there's a party going on. They punched a hole through the wall, and she's like, what? The owner's out of town. Like, he's an out-of-town investor as well. And she's like, can you take pictures? And I'm like, no effing way. Like, we're not going back in there. Yeah. And the property manager is just like nowhere to be found at this point. Like, he's just went in. We were just like
join the party.
We were just, basically we were just door openers at this point. Like, and he walked in, he did his thing. He looked upstairs, downstairs. He was outside. He was already back at the sidewalk in front of the house. And we're just like freaking out. Right. And we go out there, and I was like, wow, that was unexpected. You know, this place is supposed to be vacant. And he was like, yeah, well, it happens. And I'm like, does this happen a lot with your guys' properties? He's like, oh, all the time. This is nothing. This is easy. And So I was like, what do you think? He's like, yeah, good bones. And he's like, we just need vacant possession. I'm like, I guess you do, He's like, oh, we'll get it one way or another. So yeah, they bought the property.
Oh my God.
Wrote an offer, bought the property, and they put like must be vacant possession,
Yeah.
And then they got it at a crazy good deal. Like at the time it was like 90 grand or 100 grand,
Yeah.
But same shorter story, but same property manager. The next house they bought was on Mountain Avenue. It was like the first or second block in from Main Street. And so he texts me and he says, I want to look at this duplex. And it was tenant occupied. So we had to give 24 hours notice. Same thing, met him out there. It was like 8:30 in the morning. Pulled up to the front of the house. And the listing agent told me, you're good to go for the showing, but knock first. Because the tenants are probably going to be home. Like basically when the tenants are not being responsive, all you have to basically do is give them notice, and then agents just show up, right? And so I knocked on the door, and before I knocked on the door and showed this house, the project manager, or the property manager that I was showing the property to, was already there, but he was standing in the front yard of the neighboring house, which was also a 2-story duplex. He's standing in the front yard, and it is like minus 40 outside. It is freezing. I have my like big parka on with my fur hood, and he's out there with his Hells Angels patch, standing there smoking a cigarette. He's got a Bluetooth on, like a Bluetooth headset, and a cell phone. And all the windows and doors of this 2-story duplex that he's standing in front of have been removed from the property, and they're stacked up in front of the house. And you could tell the heat was still on because all the fog was just pouring out of every opening on this house. It looked like the house was on fire, actually.
Wow.
And I'm like, I won't say his name or anything, but I was like, what are you doing here? Do you know? He's like, oh, this is one of our properties. And this is what happens when the tenants don't want to pay. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, we freeze them out. And I'm like, what do you mean you freeze them out? He's like, well, we come and shut everything off, and we take all the windows and doors out, freeze them out. I'm like, wow, that's pretty intense. Definitely don't want to get on your bad side.
No.
Yeah. And he referred to them as a word that I'm not going to say on here, but that's the way that these guys operate. And definitely could not take that approach. Like in my real estate portfolio, I freak out if we had a rental property and I drove by and, there was a piece of garbage in the front yard. Like I'm too attached to my real estate. So,
right.
But
wow.
But yeah,
and not to mention the people. Like I remember having shown a house on Atlantic, and I was with one of the investors that I worked with a lot, and he had when we went in there, this poor woman who, I think she was blind, if I'm not mistaken, blind or deaf, I don't remember which one, but I think it was blind. And so not a more vulnerable state anyway. And the roof in the bathroom was leaking so bad that it had shorted out a bunch of the circuits and the wiring.
Oh my God.
And it was just such a hellhole, right? Like it was just like a horrible, horrible spot. And he's like, I can't buy this house, but I could rent you something else, right? Like, what are you paying? What are you, right? Like, because he's just like,
felt so bad.
He felt so bad for her and was just like right away, like, we need to get you into something better because this is not a place that someone should be living in. There was mold. There's so many problems. And, half the place didn't have electrical because of a leak. Yeah. And I mean, you shouldn't have to be, taking a pee with rain coming down on your head.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
it's really sad. It is
Yeah.
really, really sad. I mean,
Hmm.
it's safe to say that they bought 3 properties through me,
Yeah.
and I don't think, like, I've definitely shown my fair share, and I've worked with investors and stuff like that, and
Hmm.
you know, flip properties, and even working with sellers who are going through a, pretty tumultuous situation,
Right.
whether it's like a power of attorney sale or a hoarder house or an estate sale or something. But like, that's a side of real estate, like that slumlord, um, you know, just, you don't care who lives in the house as long as you're cash flowing. Like,
Yeah.
that's just not a side that I would be proud of, and I don't think I would, like, I'm not champing at the bit to work with people like that. So,
Right. Yeah.
um, because it's the way they treat people. They don't they don't treat them like human beings.
Exactly. I'm all about, yes, I want you to make money while you're renting this house out, but I also want you to think about the human that lives there.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, pretty crazy, and I've definitely seen my fair share of stuff, and especially with properties like that.
Yeah.
And I'm not poo-pooing on the North End at all, because
Yeah.
I love the North End. I think there's a lot of heart there, and there's a lot of really great parts of the North End, and it's really come a long way even since I started in real estate. Like, there's a lot of new development, a lot of money, and these community groups that are banding together to really clean everything up, and
Right.
it's kind of, a lot of the slumlords are starting to sell off their inventory now, and you have homeowners that are actually buying it and living there, and raising families and stuff now. So it's like, I don't want to call it gentrification, but it kind of is in a way, but in a
Right.
positive way, I guess. But yeah, so that concludes my story.
That's
Um,
awesome.
so maybe now we can get into our topic.
Hmm.
And this topic, it kind of stems from a few things. Mostly, like, mainly situations that we come across working with buyer clients, um, and relocation clients. Um, I had the pleasure of helping some relocation clients that had to move here for work, and they were kind of familiar with Winnipeg, but only from what they read and saw online.
Oh, okay.
And they had an idea in their head based on where their jobs were going to be in Winnipeg, of where they would like to end up or like to live. And these are areas like River Heights and Bridgewater and Sage Creek and River Park South and Southdale. And I think it was a matter of them looking at realtor.ca while they were still living in BC. They hadn't come out here yet for a house hunting trip, but they were trying to find the right areas for them.
Yeah.
And when I had an in-depth conversation with them, and started asking them, like, what kind of a community would you like to end up in? Thinking about kids and stuff like that, like, what's important to you? And a lot of the answers that they gave kind of led me to open up to thinking about bedroom communities outside of the city.
Right.
And I guess where they live, or where they lived, there was really not a lot, like, a bedroom community or small town outside of the major city, or even a suburb, could result in, like, being stuck in traffic for 2 or 3 hours.
Right.
Whereas here, like a bedroom community outside of the city, say, I don't know, Lorette or Niverville or
Yeah.
Dugald or Oakbank, Stonewall, they're only about 20 to 30 minutes to the city, and you're not going to be stuck in traffic for nearly that long. If it
No.
says 30 minutes on GPS, unless there's an accident, it's going to be 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So they didn't I guess, really think to look at that. And so what we did is they came in on a house hunting trip, and we started looking at all their areas that they had kind of looked at or wanted to look at first in the city. And then I said, guys, let's go, follow me, and let's go to all these other communities. And they were like totally blown away. And they ended up buying in Dugald,
Awesome.
and which is 10 to 12 minutes east of the city, down a highway, close to everything. And there are definitely pros and cons and reasons why they did that. But I think it's important for us, because we get questions like this all the time from buyers, like, should we move outside of the city, or should we stay in the city? It's different for people if they have kids and they want to be part of a certain catchment or whatever. But
right,
there are pros and cons to both. So I figured we could spend some time and kind of talk about those. And then, so that's the first part of it. The second part is COVID. During COVID, we saw the biggest
migration, I'd say.
Yeah. Outside of the city.
Yeah.
And people moving seemingly further and further away. And it was, I think, two reasons for that. First reason was all the crazy bidding wars that were happening during the low interest rate period and the low inventory period resulted in houses selling for prices that were out of touch and out of reach for a lot of purchasers. So they were kind of forced to look outside of the city. Right. But then during the time where people didn't necessarily lose their jobs, but they had to work from home, and employers were comfortable having their employees working from home, and in most cases they were more like effective.
Yeah, not all companies have made people go back to the office.
Yeah. And so a lot of these people that were working remotely, they were like, okay, let's move like 20, 30, 40 minutes outside,
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's been a lot of reasons why that has taken place. And a lot of these bedroom communities are growing, as a result, because they have a larger tax base, and, those taxes can go towards better schools and more amenities and parks and recreation stuff and
services. Yeah.
Services, like, and they're almost like little extensions of the city now. But yeah, maybe let's talk about, if I'm a buyer and I come and I say, like, we're thinking about buying, we're not really too sure where, but this is the kind of house we need. And, we're cool, like city or 20 to 30 minutes outside of the city. What are the big drawbacks? What are the big pros of wanting to make a decision like that? So I guess going through pros and cons, I think a big pro is more bang for the buck.
More bang for the buck is a big one.
Like a price that you would pay for, let's just say 1,300 square foot bungalow in Niverville, brand new home, brand spanking new home with like a decent sized lot and a double attached garage.
Yeah.
Nice new brand spanking new area, close to everything, all the amenities that you need.
Everything. Brand new high school, brand new rec center, brand new, all kinds of restaurants, medical care, everything.
Niverville is a great example because it's kind of like a self-sustaining small city now almost.
They're getting close. I know that's their goal within the next 10 years.
Yeah. But like, it's a place where you don't, if weather is bad and you can't make it into the city to get groceries, they have everything you need there.
Yeah.
So you get more bang for your buck. So that's a big pro.
Big bang, yeah.
I would say, your taxes, like, taxes are typically a little bit less than what you'd get for the same product in the city.
Yeah, when we moved to Niverville, like, I always like to compare that, right? Because I had a 40 by 100 lot in Transcona with, a 1,100 square foot house. And when we moved out here, our taxes were the exact same, but we have like a 65-foot wide lot with a 1,500 square foot house, and right, like what is it, 65 by 120 lot, right?
Yeah.
Like, so you have way more property, and yeah, my taxes ended up being the same, but I have way more.
Yeah, you get more. You get more
more bang for my buck.
Yeah, the dollar stretches a lot further.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a con with moving to a bedroom community could be the commuting.
Yeah.
You know, and the reason why they're called bedroom communities, the reason why they use that term is because these are cities, or not cities, but towns and communities that are within that close enough proximity for people to drive into the city, go to work, and then come back home and sleep and,
Right.
you know, and enjoy everything on the weekends, and then, you know, drive into work and drive home.
Yeah.
So a con could be the commuting, but the great thing about where we live is, you know, there's so many of these amazing little bedroom communities that have so many amenities within that 20 to 30 minute commute time. It's not like living in, you know, Airdrie where you have to commute into Calgary. You know, that's a totally different animal, you know, or even like certain towns or bedroom communities, you could call them, in the GTA, where, yeah, you're going to be stuck on the freeway for hours, you know?
Yeah.
I know in those cities, they have like GO trains now, and they have kind of like rapid transit systems where people that commute into the city, they get on the train, but then you still got to drive, you still got to get on the train, and then you got to, you know, and you're quite limited, you know, at least where we are, you know, you get in your car and you drive everywhere because everything's so spread out.
Right.
You know, so there's like the fuel costs and the insurance costs and stuff
those
like
are
that
cons, definitely.
with driving. And, you know, we don't have the most perfect perimeter highway. You know, I think it's the only perimeter highway that I know of any major city of relatively large scale, where you have
multiple train tracks
of train tracks, where
and stoplights
and stoplights, you know. But I think that they're definitely our province is spending some hard money on improving that infrastructure, and things are getting a lot better.
But even if you had to stop at a train, like, honestly, the most amount of time it takes me to get anywhere in the city, I live in Niverville, and like if I had to go all the way to Seven Oaks, that's pretty much the furthest, right, from my house. And it's like 45 minutes to maybe 50 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, like it's not usually much more of a ride than that. And that's like, you know, my sister lives in Kitchener and has to, you know, she commutes to near Toronto Airport. Like, everything's an hour and a half there. Everything always takes an hour and a half, and that's if traffic's going well. If there's no accidents or anything else.
A pro of a bedroom community could be lower crime rate.
Right. Yeah. A lot lower crime rate. I mean, we are seeing so much more crime in the city these days. People are like sawing off your catalytic converter right in the street or at Costco parking lot or wherever. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen in the bedroom communities, because I'm sure it's happened at least a couple times in Niverville, but it's not a daily occurrence, right? Like, it's not nearly as prevalent. I don't know. That's definitely a pro.
A con could be your shopping experience. So if you're somebody who likes to go to the mall and do all that kind of stuff, you know, most of these towns, like, they do have some good local stores and stuff like that. But
if you want to go store to store, like a mall experience, there might not be so much of that. But I mean, it's not that far either. Like, if you consider, like, say for instance, when I lived in Transcona, and I mean, it was 20 minutes to KP from East Transcona. Right? Like, or St. Vital Mall was at least 25 minutes.
And the one good thing about the good thing about this city, like, despite the the perimeter and everything, is that the major arteries that run through the city, they all connect to that perimeter, and all the
Right.
highways that connect to the bedroom communities, it's basically a straight shot. So you could go from, say, Niverville up 59 highway, you could take 59 all the way to Transcona,
Yeah.
and you'd get there in no time flat. Or
Yeah.
you could jump from 75, which
To
is a great
Kennington.
4-lane highway, and you
Yeah.
could get right to Route 90, and you could take Route 90 all the way up to Polo Park. And, even during rush hour traffic, it's like a nothing burger compared to sitting in rush hour traffic in GTA,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's so much shopping. Like, honestly, I of course I talk about Niverville a lot because that's where I am, and the fact that there is like multiple major routes from Niverville to the city, to different areas of the city. Like, I know, some people love shopping at the take 75 in and go to the Kenniston area. There's Costco, the
everything's
outlet
there.
mall, IKEA, everything. There's so much there. It's easy to get to St. Mattel Center from here. It's easy to get to KP from here, or Regent area, right? Like, there's so many options, and they're all like 25 to 30 minutes away, right? Like, when the highways are bad, or if there's a bad accident, I don't have to take 75 in. I don't have to take 59 in, right? Like, there's multiple ways to get to the city. And those are things that I like to help people consider when they're picking where they want to live. If you're picking, like, depending on where you work and stuff like that, like, you want to pick something that's fairly easy. Like, in our winters, we do have closed highways sometimes. I wouldn't want to have to rely on just Highway 75 all the time.
Right. Yeah.
Right. 75 closes a lot.
I remember when we were selling in St. Adolphe, that was a really big factor for a lot of people to consider, because St. Adolphe is kind of, you can take St. Mary's Road and get into the city that way. But if the river is flooded, or if the roads are bad,
spring,
you could jump across the bridge to 75 and go in that way, and then you have a 4-lane highway. Or you could go east down 210 and you could hit 59.
Exactly.
There's like multiple entries and exits out of that town. So no matter where you work on which side of the city, your commute is relatively the same, and you have access points to get in and out, right?
Right.
Same thing with Dougal. Dougal, you have 15 and you have 206.
Yeah.
So if
you
you're
could even go Garvin, depending on what side of the city you work on.
Right. And it's that's a great thing about these towns. They're very accessible.
Right. Exactly. I mentioned Garvin because I used to work on McPhillips when I lived in Enola. So we used to take Garvin to 59 and then the perimeter.
Yeah. Pro, I think this is a big pro.
Mm-hmm.
Being somebody who grew up in a small town and went to a small town school, the pro is that your kids are going to have a closer proximity to school.
Right.
And, feel a little bit more safe walking to school,
right. Or there's a nice community feeling on the bus if they have to be bused. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
You're either close enough to walk or you're being bused.
Yeah. And that small town community feel is I think it's so important when you're a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Not that growing up in the city is bad by any means, but there's just something to be said about that, and as you get older and you look back, like that's one thing I really appreciate about, my life is going to a small town school and, getting to know a lot of those people and a lot of those families. It was a lot easier to remember everybody. And, there's always cliques when you're in school, and there's always like clubs and stuff.
Yeah.
But growing up where I grew up, everybody was, because it was a relatively small city or small town, like it was everybody kind of knew each other, and there wasn't a lot of like picking on people or bullying and stuff like that. Everybody was kind of, fluid and would go from clique to clique and hang out with everybody. And go to parties and stuff like that. So, but yeah, you know, I think that small town schools are always great.
I'd say another good thing, I have a couple more pros actually.
Yeah.
Most of these towns have full services like town sewer, water, garbage and recycling pickup, all that stuff, right? Like there's not a lot of, like I'd say the majority of the bedroom communities include all that.
Yeah.
And if they don't, they have it's still easy services. It's not like you're dealing with like septic tanks or septic fields and stuff like that, right? Like,
right.
Because I mean, if you want to be really rural, right, you're going to deal with that. The other thing that I always love to mention to people is how much better rural medical is.
Yes.
If you like, I always recommend people like switch doctors as soon as you move to a bedroom community, switch doctors to a doctor nearby, because when they send you for tests, you're going to get in weeks instead of months in the city.
That's very true. Yeah.
And if you have to, ultrasounds, colonoscopies, all that stuff is within weeks instead of months.
Yeah.
And there's so many more hospitals. And I mean, yes, if you have a heart attack, you probably still want to go to St. Boniface, but, but for the most part, for the most everyday stuff, like our hospitals and our doctors in rural Manitoba, whether it's Eastern Interlake. I know I'm in Southern Health. Yeah. Like they're awesome.
Yeah.
Right. They have awesome care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. A con could be like things like dining if you're a foodie, or entertainment. Some of these towns might have a few restaurants sprinkled,
right,
but where I grew up, it was like the options were pretty limited.
Yeah.
And, going out for a nice family dinner or like a date night.
Yeah.
The greatest thing we had was like Boston pizza.
Yeah.
That was like the holy grail. Like everybody went there.
Yeah.
That was like the peak of the culinary.
I like Portage's Boston pizza.
Yeah.
We always stop there.
But and then it was like 500 pizza places, and
yeah,
it was like pizza and chicken.
Niverville has lots of pizza and chicken too.
Yeah.
But they also have a really good tavern. I know, like, I'm thinking, okay, where else? Dugald has Chicken Chef. So again, chicken and pizza. And
we had some friends move to Dugald.
Yeah.
And they moved from Transcona.
Yeah.
And they like not huge cooks or whatever when they didn't cook a lot of their own meals when they lived in Transcona.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because they had DoorDash and Skip and Uber Eats and all this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. So now they don't have any of that.
Now they don't have any of that.
Yeah.
But what it did is it forced them to cook good food. And so they stock up at Costco or wherever. And Dugald is relatively it's like 8 minutes to Oakbank, and they have a big co-op grocery store there. Yeah. So they load up, and then now they're into like barbecuing and smoking meat and, all that great stuff. So you could spin this in the other direction too. Your culinary experience could be forced to improve and have a lot better food because of it.
Yeah. I fell in love with the Instant Pot when I moved to Niverville because, again, we can't just pick up the phone and order takeout. I mean, we can, but we can only eat so much chicken because that's the only takeout here.
Right.
Well, sorry. No, that's the only delivery here. We could pick up Chinese.
Yeah. I would say a big pro would be community events.
Yeah.
Like sometimes when you're in the city, like if you're in an area of this city, like there's always community events that go on.
Tons, yeah.
But sometimes it can feel hard for people to kind of like fit in.
Yeah.
Especially if you're a first time buyer and you're moving into like a new area that you're not familiar with, because, maybe price is dictating okay, I can only really afford to buy a house in this community, the chances are there's going to be a lot of lifers in that community, or people who've grown up there that
Yeah.
feel like they're a little bit closer, have a closer sense of community. And not to say that people aren't welcoming of newcomers, but it's a little bit, can feel a little bit more overwhelming, I find.
Right.
Whereas in a small town, people are so, especially a bedroom community, like 90% of the people there are from elsewhere.
From
You know,
elsewhere. Yeah.
it's like on the East Coast, they call it, come from away.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like a lot of people that come from away that
Yes.
live in these towns. They
Yeah.
come from the city, or they come from a different province. And so it's more of like a melting pot of different people, and the communities are kind of built around that, and the events are built around that. It's a
Right.
great way to like get out and meet your neighbors and meet people and meet friends and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But oftentimes, most of these towns, they're going to have an arena or a community center where
Yeah.
they're going to have a barbecue event, or they're going to have a farmer's market, or they're going to have, lots of stuff. And it's a
Right.
great way to get out, meet your neighbors. And, maybe they have like a dog walking club. Maybe they have a Facebook group where they offer different things like paint nights, or, whatever, like golf events.
Mom's nights out.
Yeah,
Mom and toddler dates and stuff like that.
exactly. Yeah. So it can give people like a easier entry point into finding their unique identity within a community.
Right.
And then that leads to my last pro, which is just the small town comfort. Like growing up in a small town, it's just more laid back. It's more chill. It's more like lemonade stands on the corner. It's more, like just things that are like, sometimes like I feel so fortunate to work with different developers and home builders and buyers that force me out into a lot of these different communities.
Right.
And you get to see how these communities run, how the towns look, how clean they are, how, like, and what you see is like, especially after being in the city, it's like, oh my gosh, there's like a group of kids ripping on dirt bikes in the field.
Yeah.
Or just like, oh my gosh, there's actually kids playing outside.
Right. The kids playing outside is a big one. Like when we moved here, and I mean, sure, there was a lot of kids playing outside when I lived in Transcona, but like constant, like under supervision, right? Like there's less need for supervision here. And I'm not saying that people are letting their toddlers play outside on supervision.
Wild children.
But there are a bit more wild children, right? Like,
Yeah.
A few doors down, there's like a family with 5 boys. And, I mean, once the oldest one kind of hit a certain age, like, yeah, there was lots of times where they're outside playing and
Yeah.
mom's in the house. And
that freedom,
yeah,
and that creativity, what it does is it helps kids to build character.
absolutely.
And
Yeah, I
it
see
gets
those
their
kids walking
imagination.
their dog every day, and I'm just like, those kids are learning stuff. Like,
Yeah.
they're going to be capable adults, right?
Yeah.
Like capable people,
Yeah.
even in their teens, right?
Yeah,
Like,
it's cool. Like, going out to some of these communities. I mean, there's always like a huge hockey presence in
yeah,
the wintertime and in the summertime, whether it's like ball hockey in the middle of the street and the kids
yeah,
are pulling their nets away. Like you it's less likely that you would find that, on Kildare Avenue,
no, you definitely won't
I
find
mean,
that on Kildare.
there's a lot of parks in the city, so that's
Sure.
a pro. Is there's lots of parks around,
Yeah.
but being able to go out in your front yard and skateboard in your front street with
Yeah.
your friends, or
Ride
play
bikes.
ball hockey, ride bikes, like
Yeah.
take your dogs for a run.
Yeah.
There's just something nostalgic feeling about a small town and a community feel. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, I mean, there are so many great communities around Winnipeg. And we work in all of them. And I would say that, I finding myself working more in these communities now than the city. And, but I love it. It's so great. And, so yeah, if you're a buyer out there and you're considering making a move outside of the city, or, if you're a relocation client and you're looking at making a move to Manitoba and you're looking for a small community, something quiet, or a great place to raise your kids, just let us know and we'll find that for you.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if you want to be on the north side, if you want to be on the east side, west side, south side. There's so many great communities out there.
Absolutely.
So, but that's a great segue into giving some flowers away to some local businesses.
Yes.
And my businesses are all in the city, so not in small towns.
So are mine, I think.
I'll let you go first.
Oh yeah. Okay. So Spice World, it's at 137 Marion, and I know that they're all non-GMO, and probably a bunch of other positive things too. But I make my own chai every couple of weeks, and I just find like their stuff is so much better than, like, say, picking up at Bulk Barn or Superstore. And I was having a hard time finding orange peel, but of course they had it, and I had forgotten to check there until yesterday. I had been gifted some stuff from Spice World, and I was like, oh, I should check there for my orange peel.
I had to go there one time I was making a mulled wine.
Oh yeah.
And I was trying to find star anise or anise, however you say it.
Yeah, it's anise. Yeah, I use that in my chai all the time. Yeah.
And I couldn't find it anywhere, and went there, and they have a crazy selection there.
They really do. And some of this, did you try some of their spicier stuff? Like they have like ghost pepper, and I can't even remember this other one. No. It's considered like the hottest thing you could possibly find, basically. Yeah. I know Big Smoke has a blend with some of the really hot stuff. Yeah. And so my other business is Tyson James Photography. And I was sitting down with clients to present an offer on Sunday, and they were just gushing over Tyson's photos.
Oh, and that's
awesome. So they were like, had gotten the house ready for sale, all the things that they do, the decluttering and cleaning and everything. And he took pictures, and he does a good job of not distorting the picture so that they don't actually look like the house. But and that's what they love. Like made their house look really great without distorting it to make the rooms look like way bigger or anything like that. And so they were gushing about him. But I also like to mention that he also takes amazing pet photos.
Yes, he does.
Mabel and Penny love him. And I love that he gets really interactive photos of them and doesn't just make them pose by sitting really still.
Yeah, he did photos, pet photos for us too. And he's so great, with animals, and he's good at getting the candid shots.
Yeah, the candid
shots, natural shots. And he's a very well-rounded photographer. He also does headshot photos. So if you're a company and you have employees or if you're a realtor and you want to spice up your headshot because your headshot is still from frickin' 20 years ago.
Well, mine's old enough. I have hair down here.
Yeah.
I really should.
But he does a good job.
Yeah.
And he does all of our real estate photos, video. He does drone.
Yeah.
He does portraits,
wide
pets,
variety of stuff, and he's great at it.
The whole deal. Yeah. And he's also doing a music video. So if you're a band out there and you need a music video, reach out to Tyson.
Yeah, he's got lots of fun things going on.
Yeah. For me this week, it's two businesses that are staples in Tara and our lives. and they're both at the Forks. And the first one is Element Wine and Spirits. They're a local purveyor of natural wine. They have a massive wine selection that you can't find anywhere else. And we've tried.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is, small purveyors, small growers. But it's just amazing. Like, most of their wine is without, like, natural wine is goes through a natural fermentation process using the natural yeasts in the wine during fermentation. So they're a lot more punchy. They're a lot more, and they're a lot better for you because, I mean, you still get a hangover, but they're not jam-packed full of extra sugar or coloring.
Right.
And that's what really
Probably
gets,
reduce the sulfites.
yeah, like getting wine hangovers are the worst, right? But a lot of times it's not as a result of drinking too much. It's as a result of the crap that they put in the wine.
Yeah.
Like when you're going to the LC and you're picking up a bottle of like $10 Shiraz, guaranteed it's like grape juice that's loaded with sugar, and it's just not good for you, right?
Right.
So they sell a lot of like natural wine from all over the world. They sell a lot of natural sparkling wine, champagne, and different grape-based liqueurs that are really hard to find. So if you're like a cocktail fanatic and you're looking for something like an aperitif or like a Amaro or something like that, chances are they have it. They also have things like cocktail cherries and different things that you can't find. And so that's like a staple for us.
Yeah.
Usually when we go, we buy boxes.
Oh, really?
We load up. And then Pacero at the Forks. So one of the first like real good restaurants that Tara and I started diving into, and it was like our favorite spot back in the day, was called Deseo Bistro. And they started kind of in the Exchange area on Albert, and then they ended up moving to South Osborne. And it was started by this chef, Scott Bagshaw. It was a phenomenal restaurant, kind of like Spanish influence. And it's all tapas style. So you order like smaller plates, shareable plates, but you order a whole bunch of them, and flavors and everything. And the quality of the ingredients were so amazing. And then they closed down Deseo, but then in its wake, he opened Pacero, which is an Italian restaurant at the Forks. And then he opened Make, which is like kind of like an Asian fusion, Japanese kind of style, Chinese style restaurant. That's like in the Corydon area.
Oh, okay.
And then he opened a restaurant called Enoteca, which is very similar to Deseo, very like heavy Spanish influence, but they're all tapas style. And we love them all equally, but Pacero just has the best staff. They're so friendly. They will remember your name. They, they just like, the service there is so incredible. And the food is like, oh my God, you could lure me into a cage with that stuff. But our favorite dishes there are, we try to order everything, but favorite dishes are the carbonara. They have a lobster carbonara, which is the most amazing thing ever. They have baked gnocchi. It's like little potato dumplings, and they're so good. Sometimes they put like truffle and black garlic, and they do this beef short rib that just like melts in your mouth.
Yeah.
And then my favorite thing there is it's a cauliflower. It's like a roasted cauliflower, and it has brown butter, and it has Gruyere cheese on top.
Oh,
And like, oh my God, like it just,
that sounds amazing.
you're eating it and you're just like sliding off the table. It's like one of those restaurants where it's so good. It's so rich that you just want to like put sweatpants on after. But, yeah, they have great wine. They get a lot of their wine from Ellement as well. So it's a great way to like go try some different wines, maybe try some different cocktails, and then go to Ellement after and try to find those bottles. And then, yeah, but, oh, it's so good. It's so good. I can't wait to go back there. I'm salivating. But yeah, so that's it for this week, I think, hey?
I think so.
Yeah. But again, thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in to episode 6. As always, like, share, subscribe. And yeah, if you guys have any questions or anything you want us to run through or answer on next week's pod, then we'll definitely do that. And I am working on a list of guests we want to bring on.
Right on.
Some of them are real estate related. Some of them aren't. They're local business owners and stuff like that. It's always interesting to talk to different people and get like a more nuanced perspective. But yeah, I hope everybody has a great weekend, and look forward to seeing everybody next week.
Sounds good. And go Jets go. Finally get the Jets back tomorrow night from the break.
Let's go.
Awesome.
All right. See you guys. See everybody.
Okay. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye for now.